Jamie Iceman Stevenson, the drug kingpin, has been jailed for 20 years over a global plot to flood Scotland with £100 million worth of cocaine.
We know that he operates at the top table of organised criminality.
It's all about ego, it's all about power, it's all about violence and threats.
He is perhaps the most prolific drug dealer in Scotland in recent years.
The sky over Glasgow is a leaden grey, the kind that seeps into your bones. In these streets and alleys, Jamie Iceman Stevenson made his name. Born and bred in Rutherglen, a tough working-class town, he grew up hard and silent. By the time he was an adult, he was already a fixture in Scotland's underworld. Friends and enemies alike called him Iceman, not because he kept a freezer stocked with ice, but because he was cold and ruthless. Like an underworld king who learned every lesson from crime novels, he moved with calculated restraint. He once used a roaring shotgun against a rival, and in another life he helped orchestrate a multi-million-pound money-laundering ring. He lived like a businessman, driving sleek cars and wearing tailored suits, but his empire was built on fear, intimidation, and the lucrative trade of illegal drugs. By the late 2010s, Stevenson was no ordinary street thug. He had climbed the ranks of organised crime. Early on, police made him one of Scotland's most wanted men. In 2006, a massive investigation codenamed Operation Folklore had him and his stepson under constant surveillance. Detectives even bugged his homes and listened to thousands of hours of conversations. They uncovered a treasure trove, dozens of luxury watches, 10 cars, hundreds of thousands in cash, all bought with the proceeds of Class A drugs. The press compared him to Tony Soprano, Glasgow's own mob boss. He pleaded guilty to laundering cash in 2007 and spent a few years behind bars, but that only sharpened his instincts. After his release, he watched the underworld like a chess master, moving in the shadows. An old friend and rival once thought he'd killed was left alive and wondering why he'd let his guard down. The Iceman had survived betrayal, murder charges, even assassination attempts. By 2020, at 59 years old, he appeared to the outside world as a quiet entrepreneur. But behind closed doors, he was plotting something massive. Stevenson's boldest plan was built around a simple ruse, using bananas from Ecuador to smuggle cocaine into Britain. The idea was devilishly clever. Bananas are shipped in huge volumes around the clock. They're heavy, soft, and nobody bats an eye at a shipment from South America. Put a stack of cocaine blocks in a banana crate, and it looks like just another innocent delivery. Stevenson knew all about legitimate import businesses, so he set one up as a front. A middleman or two would keep their hands clean, and the whole thing would sail under the radar. In February 2020, in a sunlit hotel in Alicante, Spain, the plan was hatched. Stevenson met with David, a veteran fruit trader from Glasgow. Over glasses of espresso, they shook hands on a partnership. Unknown to most, Stevenson had quietly purchased David's fruit import company on paper, or at least gained control of it through friendly investment. David was to be the face of the operation. The company would pretend to import fruit in the ordinary way, but hidden inside its crates would be kilos of cocaine. They even recruited a paper director, someone with no scruples of their own, to sign the shipping paperwork. If customs ever asked, that dummy director could pretend ignorance. They discussed logistics in hushed code. In the encrypted chats they used, Lloyd Cross, Stevenson's young accomplice who ran a recovery truck firm, had the nickname Shaggy Goat. The fruit trader David was known only as Trendy Mutant. They mentioned blue-chip fruit companies and paper directors talking about how to disguise the money trail. Cross would drive cash under cover of night in one of his tow trucks. He even joked about turning a delivery service truck into a cash courier. One message, smuggled between the lines, bragged that the profits would be life-changing. They knew they were dealing in vast sums. Unbeknownst to Stevenson's gang, a global dragnet was tightening. In early 2020, a coalition of police forces hacked EncroChat, the encrypted phone network used by gangsters across Europe. What had promised anonymity became a window into crime. Investigators in France and the UK read message after message. They saw the meeting in Alicante on video calls. They watched as the plans for bananas from Ecuador were spelled out. It was as if the gang were drawing a map in chalk for them. Over the spring and summer of 2020, dozens of trucks left South America bound for Glasgow. Each one was addressed to Glasgow Fruit Market, Stevenson's front company. For months, Border Force officers in Dover let them through, shaking their heads at so many innocent banana crates. But the trap was set. In September 2020, the 18th shipment arrived. Border agents opened a crate and found something surreal: rows of gleaming silver foil-wrapped packages hidden among the bananas. At first glance, it looked like something out of a movie. Inside those foil wraps were blocks of cocaine, each nearly a kilogram, stacked like bricks. A total of 119 packages held 952 blocks, nearly a ton of powder with purity up to 73%. On the table, street value roughly 76 million. One officer later described the scene as absolutely chilling: crates of ordinary fruit concealing the means to poison so many lives. At the same time, another part of Stevenson's enterprise unraveled. In June 2020, police in England raided a nondescript warehouse in Rochester, Kent. Inside was a pill factory, a hidden industrial plant churning out etizolum, a potent sedative known on the street as street Valium. The equipment could press 250,000 pills an hour. Authorities seized some 13.5 million tablets and dozens of pill presses. Files and phones from that site showed Stevenson's involvement, arranging supplies, recruiting people to distribute the pills, even planning to ship 200 kilos of etizolum by train. The Iceman's fingerprints were all over that operation too. It was like finding another arm of the same monster reaching across the country. After those raids, police began hunting Stevenson himself. He wasn't there to be caught. He had vanished, leaving Scotland for Europe as soon as the net closed in. The National Crime Agency issued an international alert. He was tagged as most wanted, a dangerous man. But gangsters always have a hub somewhere, in Spain, the Netherlands, or further afield. And they often slip quietly into the expatriate communities of the Balkans or Latin America. In early 2022, the hunt ended. Stevenson was spotted jogging in a Dutch park near Bergen op Zoom, out for a morning run like any retiree, his cheeks flushed with effort. It was an ordinary scene until it wasn't. Dutch officers, working with the NCA and Scotland Yard, swooped. In minutes, the Iceman's free run was over. He was extradited back to Glasgow. Gone was the swagger. The crime lord stood in custody, facing the music. His trial in late 2024 unfolded with grim detail. In the dock, he wore a grey suit, shaved head, and carefully coiled tattoos visible on his neck. Prosecutors painted a picture of a man who had directed all this like a conductor. The EncroChat messages were played in court, transformed into narrative as lawyers told the jurors what was really going on. The story of those banana crates was spelled out block by block. They described how Stevenson bought an innocent fruit import business, how he lied to shipping companies, how he had drivers on call to move dirty cash. He even had a low-level henchman known as Gordon Stevens in the Glasgow fruit market, who was actually a straw man. Witnesses recounted how this Stevens in the records didn't exist in reality. Someone noticed a fruit market van being towed by Cross's recovery truck. Inside it was hidden cash for the deal, and the real trader David later came and picked it up. By that point, police had the full conspiracy: the money, the cover companies, the routes. When interviewed, the frontman David broke down. "I know what it is about," he told one colleague. "I'm going to jail for a long time," he lamented. Stevenson's stepson Gerard, accomplice Lloyd Cross, the fruit trader David Billsland, a drug courier Ryan, a pill maker Paul, they all testified or pleaded guilty. In a Glasgow courtroom on a dreary October day, the judge sentenced them. Stevenson got 20 years. His partners got lesser terms, 6 or 7 years each. Lord Eric, the judge, said it was a complex, worldwide operation, and Stevenson had played the lead role in it. Behind their polite courtroom furs, the shadow of violence never left these proceedings. One detective remarked afterward that this plot was industrial and global in scale. But outside the courtroom, it was plain. No amount of sentencing could erase the damage done. The drug money had been laundered, the shipments boarded, the pills dispensed. Glasgow, like many cities, paid the price not just with cash, but with grief. On the city's streets and in its hospital wards, lives were quietly destroyed. Scotland, by 2024, had become notorious for drug deaths, among the highest in Europe. Families lost sons and daughters to addiction, some of it fueled by schemes like Stevenson's. 952 blocks of powder meant thousands of dosage units. Each could have contributed to the heartbreak of overdose or the violence of addiction. By the time police tore down the operation, the streets had already been poisoned a little. Looking beyond Scotland, Stevenson's story was only one part of a larger machine. The cocaine hidden in banana crates is a trick learned from the global playbook. Balkan crime syndicates, from Montenegro's Kavac and Shkaljari clans to networks of Serbians, Albanians and others, had taken control of how tons of cocaine move from Latin America to Europe. They often partner with Latin cartels, for example, coordinating with Brazil's Primeiro Comando da Capital to ship multi-ton loads by sea. Maritime shipping is their realm. Reports show they hide drugs in containers marked as lumber, cocoa, or yes, bananas, often rerouting shipments through West Africa or via secret docks. One recent bust in Spain found 13 metric tons of cocaine in a single Ecuadorian banana shipment. That's a dozen times what Stevenson's gang tried. Those drugs were intended for all of Europe, not just Glasgow. Antwerp and Rotterdam see record seizures every year, courtesy of these Balkan-run corridors. What distinguishes them is the logistics, not some boss in a castle. Balkan criminals operate like networks, cell by cell, smiling in one meeting and betraying in the next. They'll work with Italians or Colombians or Chinese to get a job done, blending into legitimate trade routes. If a container holds clothing, they count on it blending in with thousands more. If a ship carries bananas, they treat it as a Trojan horse. Stevenson's banana plan was almost quaint by comparison. Big gangs move dozens of such loads a month. We should call it what it is, an assembly line of misery. Each scheme, each kilo, is another nail in society's coffin. In Glasgow, addicts died of overdoses. In youth centres, counsellors dealt with teens hooked on Valium tablets that Stevenson's pill factory created. In jails, gangs fought over smuggled corners. On the mental hospital wards, doctors saw the twisted results. The human cost is not a figure. It's a mother watching her child lie cold on a dirty mattress. It's a father who works 2 jobs now because his son spent wages on drugs. It's ambulances, funerals, just the quiet replay of grief in the night. And the broader economy paid too. Imagine the ordinary import company in Glasgow watching its reputation crumble when cops knock on the doors. Shipping lines suddenly watching every fruit delivery. Taxi firms and small businesses swept clean of any loose money as investigators traced bank accounts and crypto wallets. Asset forfeiture orders took away hundreds of thousands that Stevenson had squirreled away. Even police budgets bulged. NCA, Police Scotland, Metropolitan detectives working nights on this case. They shared intelligence across borders, exchanging tips like traders. It was one of those rare moments when every law enforcement wing, customs, cybercrime units, drug squads, stood in one room and connected the dots. They used everything from CCTV footage in Alicante to satellite tracking of container ships. It felt like catching a myth. For all the resources thrown at it, the final scene wasn't a Hollywood car chase. It was a man in a suit, solemnly held to account. Jamie Stevenson now sits behind bars, likely reflecting on how a lifetime of scheme building ended at a judge's gavel. He'll be around 60 when he gets out, if ever, a prisoner with the nickname Iceman, paying for a criminal career. Yet outside those prison walls, the game doesn't stop. Another banana boat docks tomorrow. Another encrypted phone lights up with a deal. Every bust inspires 10 more plans. This Vice-style tale is gritty and grim, but it's true. Criminals will adapt. After Iceman's arrest, authorities urged vigilance. The port of Dover still processes mountains of fruit. Docks across Europe keep scanning containers, but 90% of trade moves unchecked. Shippers must now wonder if every new delivery could be a Trojan crate. Banana importers have looked over their shoulders. But none of that stops the flow. Somewhere in Ecuador, workers unaware of the crime-stacked cocaine among the pineapples. Somewhere in the Balkans, a crime boss smiles when a cargo slips through. And somewhere in Glasgow, the police headquarters screens are already tuned to the next plot. At the end, one name is locked up, but countless others are still loose in the shadows. The Iceman's downfall showed how one network can be dismantled. However, his story is just one chapter in the global drug drama. Bananas will keep being imported. Trucks will keep roaring through border checks. Headlines will trumpet the next huge seizure. But through it all, the root problems, demand for cocaine and pills, the lure of easy money, the corruption of supply chains, remain. In this 30-minute narrative, there are no easy heroes, no glamorous vigilantes. There's only a long chain of cause and effect. Fields of green where a crop grows, a hidden brick in an unassuming crate, a life twisted by an overdose, and a courtroom that sounds the gavel. The Iceman lies in cell, the verdict rendered, but the machines that grow drugs for profit and the networks that ship them through everyday commerce keep running. As we fade out from Glasgow's docks and sleepy suburbs, the warning is clear. Watch the next banana crate that comes off the ship. Listen to the low hum of a private jet's engines on a stormy night. Because the story of Jamie Stevenson is over, but the global underworld's engine is still on. And it's fueled by greed, hidden in plain sight and ready to strike again.